Hey guys, James here and welcome to JC Sharp. This week is a really exciting week for me because it's the first week where I get to bring you guys into that journey of my transition from software engineer to engineering manager. I'm hoping to do these vlogs every sort of couple of weeks or so that they fall in line with my general day-to-day working sprints and stuff like that. Which will hopefully give me plenty of things to talk about on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis. And where there isn't necessarily much to talk about how the last 2 weeks have gone each time, I'll look to go on to other topics, such as making sure that engineering managers value employees and how they can do that. And the reason that I wanted to do this journey was because I noticed when I started this journey myself, I saw that there wasn't really a massive amount of stuff out there that sort of took you through the journey of somebody else as it happened. There was plenty of stuff by other inspirational leaders, the likes of Courtney Hemphill, for example, or Simon Sinek's, a very popular one, David Loftus-Ness. So there's a lot of stuff out there about people who have gone through that journey and then coached others. And that's great, you can pick up a lot from that. But I also think seeing the experience of somebody else firsthand and having them share that is also pretty valuable. So that's what I'm hoping to bring from these videos, is that kind of regular update, all of the challenges that I faced, the mistakes that I make, the lessons that I learn. And hopefully, as we go, you guys will get something useful out of it. Ask questions, I can hopefully answer those every couple of weeks, and hopefully it'll be a fun and entertaining journey for us all. Okay, so for some context before I get stuck into how the last couple of weeks have gone, or the last few weeks have gone, I wanted to outlay to you the opportunity that I got given and when I started really working towards it. So in April, I was approached by my leadership team, and they essentially said to me that they felt like I had some natural skills within the leadership space, and that they had a plan to split our team essentially into two teams and grow them and build them to support more products. And they asked if I wanted to be the person that took line management and leadership of one of the teams in this split. Initially, naturally, quite apprehensive. I'd not long reached a career milestone for me anyway in being promoted to senior software engineer, something which I was hugely proud of at the time. And I still felt like I had roughly 3 to 5 years before I would need to even consider thinking about the next level in my career, whether that was lead engineer or engineering manager. So apprehensive, I went away and I spent a bit of time thinking about it. I took a good amount of time as well. I spoke to other engineering managers, and one of the biggest topics that came up in conversation was the fact that I would be line managing people that I'd previously worked with. And depending on who I spoke to about it, sometimes this was a huge negative, not to be done, and the worst possible thing that I could do. And for others, it was if you're comfortable, it can work. And as long as the people that you've got reporting to you are comfortable, it will work. So I felt at the time that I knew the team dynamic quite well, and I knew the people that would follow me, essentially. So I decided that, heck, why not fast track it, right? Give it a whirl, because at the end of the day, the worst thing that could have happened was it didn't work out for me or for the team, and I knew that that was a possibility, and I was happy that, if necessary, I would transition back to being a senior engineer, because you never know, I might not have made a very good leader. I still might not, who knows. But that journey started there, and so I was given the opportunity to come in and do internal courses around leadership, so stuff for coaching and mentoring employees, having challenging conversations, and all of this stuff was really new and exciting to me, nothing I'd ever sort of encountered before. And as we approached July, I was given the opportunity to have my first line management report. So I took on a junior engineer fresh out of our academy, and I started to coach and mentor him through his career. And it broke me into the line management side of things pretty steadily, to be fair. Starting to be introduced to considering about holidays, talking about my junior engineer's objectives for the quarter and what support was needed for it. All of that was, completely new to me, and a totally different sort of level of thinking. I had to go from solving technical problems in software to solving people problems. And it was great fun. And time continued until we reached October, and it was at the start of October, the first working week of October, where I got given line management of my full squad. And the plan is going forward that I will work towards splitting our backlogs, splitting our squad ceremonies that we do, and essentially then splitting the team so that in the new year we have 2 teams, one run by myself, and hopefully I'll get the opportunity to get out there and show people what I can do. And with that in mind, I do want to be a leader that is very much boots on the ground. I've always been into coding. Anybody that knows me well enough will know that when I talk about code, I get ridiculously excited. And that while the same applies with leadership, it's one of the things that I want to do is combine both in a single role. And I know a lot of engineering managers out there in the modern world do this, and I also want to do that. So it's definitely going to be an exciting journey for both me and my squad over time, and hopefully it will be fruitful for us all. So, context given then, in terms of how I got to where I am. Let's talk about the nitty-gritty. How have the last 4 weeks of being an engineering manager gone? Being brutally honest, it's been very much a roller coaster of emotions. There's been days where I've been hugely motivated, felt amazing, been really spurred on to charge head first into problems. And there's been days where I've been really quite moody, really quite negative, and really not felt like a motivator or a team player at all. It's definitely been a challenging 4 weeks, and the learning curve that has gone with that is very, very steep. It's a totally different learning curve. I mentioned before about going from solving problems with software to solving problems with people. And I think one of the first things I noticed was that taking line management of more people meant that there were more things to consider. And it sounds really stupid. You say it like that and you go, well, obviously. But I don't think it really hits you straight away. You don't think about it. You go, well, I've done it for 1 person. I should be able to do it for 4. But actually, it sort of presents a lot of challenges, because suddenly you have more people that have their own objectives for the quarter. They have the challenges that they want to complete and that they want to tackle, and it's my job to enable them. So first and foremost, I noticed that actually taking line management of more people was a bigger challenge than I thought it was. But at the same time, it's taught me a lot about, first and foremost, time management. I've had to really get into the swing of organising myself properly, making sure that I'm on top of my daily routine, my calendar. I normally plan a couple of weeks in advance as well, so that, if I've got any meeting clashes, I can get them sorted out. But yeah, the learning curve has been very, very different, but also probably very similar to what it was when I first started learning to code. There were so many new things, lots of new techniques and languages to explore, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And despite what I mentioned before about wanting to combine my role as a leader and as a programmer, what I have found that I've had to do is step away from that technical side of things for a little bit. And I'm going to use an analogy that another engineering manager gave me. And that is an analogy likening it to a video game. Now, let's say, for example, that you play one video game and you focus all your time into that one game and you level up in it quite consistently. You know that by doing it every day, you can get quite skilled at it, you can become quicker in the reflexes, you memorize the controls, you learn the patterns of enemies and where they might go, for example. But let's say now that you take on a second game and suddenly your time is split between the two. You don't level up as consistently in one as you did before. Both level up a lot slower. And sometimes you can forget the controls between the two. You make more mistakes. And I felt that my career into leadership was almost similar in that situation. I didn't want to be doing both at the same time straight away. I remember when I did start learning to code, I focused a hell of a lot of time on learning about software, learning about programming and fundamentals, basically. And I didn't really focus on anything else. So I thought to myself, well, to be the best leader that I can, the first thing I've got to do is I've got to gently step away from the coding side of things for a bit and focus my attention on becoming a leader. And as I get more adept in that role, I can reintroduce the software aspect of it. And at that point, hopefully I'll be fairly competent at both and I can be a good engineering manager who codes. And over the last 4 weeks, I'm not going to lie, I've made some mistakes. So I talk about it now and it feels really small, but for me it meant a lot. And the first mistake I made one day was realising that I actually had to leave work early one day and that I'd not planned my diary properly, and what I had to do was rebook a couple of my reports and their one-to-ones for that week. And I genuinely felt awful for this. Last minute, 1 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon, I was suddenly firing out meeting invites saying, I'm going to have to cancel our one-to-one at 3 o'clock and for the other person 3:30. I was really, really sorry about the inconvenience, the short notice. And the reason I was so bothered by it was because when I have one-to-ones, that time that I have with my manager is hugely important, right? It's a really valuable time because you can talk about a lot of different things. You can talk about how things are going, what support you need from your lead, any challenges that you're facing, get some advice, and talk about a lot of stuff. And so I knew how important it was for them to be able to have that time with me. And so I genuinely felt dreadful for dropping it last minute and moving everything around and inconveniencing people. But the following day, I spoke to another engineering manager buddy where I work, and I talked to him about it. And he said, if that is the worst mistake that you've made so far, he says, you're not doing badly. And I suppose, in hindsight, it's not the worst thing that could have happened in my first 4 weeks as an engineering manager. Missing a few meetings or having to rebook a couple of meetings. But, for me it matters. And for me, I care about the people that report to me enough to know that time is valuable. And I didn't like sort of messing around with it. But I think it brings an important topic to the front in that on this journey, I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to make more severe mistakes. If we're brutally honest, everybody makes mistakes in their role, and I'm going to make some bad ones. I can guarantee it. It might not be in the next 6 months. It might be in years to come. But the most important thing to remember about mistakes is that they teach us some really, really important lessons. I remember one in particular from a fair number of years ago now when I started my IT career. I remember having a conversation, a one-to-one with my boss at the time, and he said to me, there is a change on the list tomorrow, and I don't want you to approve it because we're not sure about the risks. I said, okay, no problem. And the next day I came in and admittedly I went on autopilot and I approved that change. And it rolled out, and it bottled everybody's computers in the organisation. I think I must have impacted about 3,500, 4,000 employees. And I think, if I remember rightly, what it ultimately meant was that the main application they used wouldn't work, wouldn't run. And so my boss came to me and he said, I thought we said you weren't going to approve that change. And I said, no, I know. I went on autopilot. I'm really sorry. It won't happen again. And I also then impacted one of our senior engineers at the time, who then had to go and write a piece of software just off the cuff that would go connect to everybody's machines on the network and roll this change back. And when you compare that to, you know, messing up your calendar in terms of a couple of people's meetings, they're not the same in terms of scale. But the impact to the people is the same. You know, there might have been difficult stuff people wanted to talk to me about on that day that they'd worked themselves up and prepared for. It just so happens that there wasn't. It was a perfectly normal day. But you never know. So for me, a mistake is a mistake. And I don't like making them, but I also know that I'm going to. And I also know from that I'm going to learn some very valuable lessons when I do make them. One of the other things that I've noticed as well over the last 4 weeks is almost how lonely it gets as an engineering manager. I know when I first started talking to a number of people about the role, you obviously have to separate yourself from the people that you previously worked with. You just do. You just have to, right? And all of a sudden, because you go from having, you know, a lot of people around you and you can have a bit of fun and rant and moan about certain things or certain people, you go to the point where actually you don't have all of those people around you. You can't moan in the same way that you could before, because actually you have to maintain a level of professionalism. So almost the role becomes quite lonely because you don't have the same avenues, the same channels. And I think one of the things I learned is that you have to find new avenues to expel that frustration. And sometimes it's better to rechannel it and invest it into actually doing something and trying to impact processes or other stuff. Sometimes you have to take it to other people. So I've started building up a network of other engineering managers that I now have weekly catch-ups with, where, you know, we can talk about things, vent occasionally, share ideas. But also, I think my girlfriend Kirsty has taken some of it as well. Come off work, and because I haven't had anybody to rant to, bless her, she just sits there and lets me raid and really sort of lay out all of the problems that I've had. But again, you know, because it becomes lonely, you can sort of almost get to a point where you feel a little bit alone, a little bit, you know, in solitude in the role. And you're not alone as an engineering manager. You know, you have obviously your boss and then other engineering managers around you, but you have to reach out and start making those connections, I think, is the main thing. So, yeah, the first few weeks have definitely been a challenge, full of different learnings, different takeaways, a couple of mistakes. But otherwise, so far, I think it's genuinely gone quite well. Okay, so there we go. That's how the first few weeks have gone for me. What I do want to do moving forward is try and end each of these videos with a little bit of advice to share for other engineering managers. It might not always be possible. You know, there's going to be those weeks where actually there's not really much advice to give. But definitely over the last 4 weeks, I've had a few key takeaways that I want to sort of go back through and share. So First of all, focus on your leadership skill. Don't try to do too many things at once, especially if you're new to the leadership role. Make sure you keep that focus. Make sure that you put the effort into learning that new skill, as you would have done if you were a software engineer learning to code. It definitely makes for an easier life rather than trying to balance multiple responsibilities. And I think you'll feel better for it. I know I do, for spending more time focusing on the leadership side of things and then re-injecting the coding side of stuff later down the line. Secondly, really look to learn about time management. I've learned so much over the last 4 weeks about how valuable my time is, both for me and for other people. And I can't tell you how much of a difference it makes being a lot more in control of that. Making sure that if people need to talk to me, they book in meetings, making sure that my calendar is up to date and also open and shared so that people can just look at it and know where I am and what I'm doing if necessary. So, really, really go to town with it and really learn about, your especially the regular routine, essentially, and make sure that it's clear in your own mind when you've got free time, when you haven't. Thirdly, make sure you look for other engineering managers to bounce ideas off. Like I mentioned before, it does get a little bit lonely when you step up, and it doesn't have to. Look for other people to talk to share ideas with, ways of working, to vent. If we're being honest, I started a buddy experience with somebody who joined my company, and actually that relationship evolved to a point where now I spend more time asking him questions about the engineering management role. So it's actually, the roles are reversed in that one, but it's been really, really good fun. And finally, don't get held up on the mistakes that you make. It's important that as a leader you learn that mistakes are going to be made, and that actually they teach some really invaluable lessons over time. Even the little ones can make you learn new things. So don't beat yourself up too much if you do make mistakes, because we're all making them, right? We're only human. So that brings me to the end of this week's vlog. I really hope you've enjoyed listening to me ramble on for whatever amount of time it's been. If you have enjoyed it, please don't forget to like the video. It means the world to me when people click that little thumbs up. And if you're looking forward to more, please hit subscribe and ring the bell for notifications. I guess that's it from me this week. So until next time, I'll see you then. Goodbye.